Hello all, welcome to Yatharth IAS Current Affairs Roundup, and in this video we are going to see the part 2 of GS3 Current Affairs happened between January to March 2023, and we are sticking here to GS3 syllabus. So the first topic here is the European Green Deal. This European Green Deal was in news because it unveiled the Green Industrial Plan to counter the United States and the Chinese competition at Davos, where the annual gala of World Economic Forum is happening. So you should know a brief detail about this Green Deal industrial plan. This is a plan to make Europe the home of clean tech and industrial innovation on the road to net zero. So they are planning to have net zero Europe by 2050. By 2050, they are planning to have net zero carbon dioxide emissions. So they are also planning for European Union funding, avoid fragmenting effect on the single market, support the clean tech transition across the whole union. The aim will be to focus the investment on strategic projects along the entire supply chain, especially to simplify and fast track permitting for the new clean tech production sites. So they cover for 4 key pillars. One is the regulatory environment, second financing, skills and trade. So the new Net Zero Industry Act will be put forward to achieve the regulatory environment, and the new act will identify clear goals for the European clean tech by 2030. So we have to consider the US factor here. The US introduced a bumper package of green subsidies with the Inflation Reduction Act. It comprises 369 billion in federal tax breaks and incentives for the development or adoption of clean technology with the US content. So the EU is concerned that the European companies will move to the United States, which has a $369 billion scheme to subsidize the green production. This European Green Deal was launched by the European Commission in December 2019. This is a very important point from your examination perspective. It is outlining a comprehensive framework of regulations and legislation aimed at achieving the EU's target of net zero carbon emissions by 2050 and a 50% to 55% cut in the emissions from 1990 levels by 2030. The next is about the Mahabali frog. The Mahabali frog was in news because it was elevated as the state frog of Kerala by the State Wildlife Advisory Board of Kerala. So the Mahabali frog is also known as purple frog, and it is endemic to the Western Ghats of India. They prefer loose, damp and well aerated soil close to ponds and ditches or streams. The appearance of this purple frog has a bloated body. So it has a bloated body as we see in this image. It has short stout limbs. You can see here the short stout limbs. It is dark purple to grayish color in its skin. So that's why since it is dark purple or grayish, that's why it is called a purple frog. It has a small head and unusually pointed snout and short muscular forelimbs to burrow the underground. So unlike other frogs, it has a very short hind legs and it does not allow it to leap from one spot to another. It remains underground most of the year except for 2 to 3 weeks during the monsoon, where it comes out to mate. The frog was named after the mythical king Mahabali, as the king visits its people once a year from the underneath world only on the Thiruonam day. The significance of this Mahabali frog is it helps in conserving the aquatic ecosystems of the Western Ghats. The threats for them are construction, quarrying and pollution. The IUCN conservation status of this Mahabali frog is near threatened. The next is about annual summit which is happening in a town called Davos in Switzerland. That is the annual summit of the World Economic Forum. It has kicked off in Davos, Switzerland. You should understand what is this World Economic Forum. It's a non-governmental Please understand, non-governmental, non-profit organization located or based in Geneva, Switzerland. Don't get confused. The annual summit will happen in Davos, but it has its base in Geneva. This is the many people will do the mistake. Many people will do the mistake. Because they get confused between Davos and Geneva. So Geneva is the place where the organization has its base, but Davos is where you have the annual summit. So World Economic Forum is known for its annual summit, which happens in Davos in Switzerland. The forum strives in all its efforts to demonstrate entrepreneurship in the global public interest while upholding the highest standards of the governance. So remember, it's a non-governmental, non-profit organization. The founder chairperson of this World Economic Forum is economist Klaus Schwab, who founded the World Economic Forum in 1971, and he has been the chairperson since then. It is largely funded by its partnering corporations. The World Economic Forum provides a platform for these corporations to shape the future, access networks, and experts to ensure strategic decision making on the most pressing world issues. It also partners with the public subsidies. You should remember some of the major reports which is published by the World Economic Forum, because they have been appearing consistently in various examinations conducted by UPSC. Global Competitiveness Report, Global IT Report, Global Gender Gap Report, Global Energy Transition Index, Global Risk Report, and Global Travel and Tourism Report. So you should also know about Davos. Davos is a town which is located on the Swiss Alps and hosts the annual World Economic Forum's meeting. It brings together some 3,000 paying members and participants for up to 5 days every January. Every January, the annual summit will take place. It discusses the global issues around 500 sessions. So why we conduct the annual summit in Davos and not in Geneva? Because they believe that this place of Davos can break tensions between different countries or different partners and help in developing the international diplomacy. That's why they use this place as a pivotal to international diplomacy, since it has a number of examples to break the tensions in the town. For example, they have given 1988 Greece and Turkey avoided war when the two signed the now famous Davos Declaration. The annual Future Investment Initiative was in news, FII. This is a Saudi Arabia's flagship investment conference, which is popularly known as the Davos in the desert. This is one of the important point for you. Next is the National Export Cooperative Society. It was a news because it is to be established with the initial capital of rupees 500 crore, and this will be the largest of the three proposed national cooperative societies. The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, CCEA, approved the setting up of three national level multi-state cooperatives, and it will be established under the Multi-State Cooperative Societies MSCS Act of 2002. So what are those? The National Multi-State Export Society, National Multi-State Cooperative Society for the Organic Products, National Level Multi-State Seed Cooperative Society. So the National Export Cooperative will have 5 promoters. They are Gujarat Cooperative Milk Marketing Federation, National Agricultural Cooperative Marketing Federation of India, NAFED, National Cooperative Development Corporation, NCDC, Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative Limited, IFFCO, Krishak Bharati Cooperative Limited, KRIBHCO. So these 5 promoters will invest rupees 100 crore each, making it the largest of the 3 proposed national cooperative society, and it will work as an export house for handicrafts, handlooms, khadi and other products. So it ensures the enhancement of the income of the cooperative member entrepreneurs. Nanofertilizers produced by the IFFCO and dairy products by the Amul will be among the first few products that are expected to be exported by the society. So this society will be different from the export promotion councils. You should also know the export promotion council since it has come in this article. So at present there are 14 export promotional councils under the Ministry of Commerce. So what are these export promotional councils? They are under the Ministry of Commerce and are registered as non-profit organizations performing the advisory and executive functions. So the Export Promotion Council only acts as a facilitator and provides information about the potential markets that can be tapped for a particular product. What is this exercise Cyclone 1? The first ever joint exercise between the Special Forces of India and Egypt, named Exercise Cyclone 1, is in progress in Rajasthan. So what is this exercise Cyclone 1? It is the first exercise of its kind, bringing the Special Forces of India as well as Egypt on a common platform. So please remember, the exercise Cyclone is between India and Egypt, and they have brought the special forces of both the countries to this platform, and this is the first exercise. The first edition is being carried out at Jaisalmer in Rajasthan for 14 days. The exercise aims to bolster defense cooperation between the two nations, that is India and Egypt, and the exercise engages both the contingents on professional skill sharing and special forces interoperability in the desert terrain. It conducts super terrorism or counter-terrorism, reconnaissance, raids, and other special forces operations in a mechanized warfare setting as well as surgical strikes. So, India-Egypt relation. The joint exercise would provide an insight into the culture and ethos of both the armies. It also fosters military cooperation and interoperability to further strengthen the diplomatic relations between India and Egypt. The only other bilateral exercise between India and Egypt is Desert Warrior. It is a joint exercise of Air Force of both the nations. So here it is different special forces who are participating in exercise Cyclone, but in Desert Warrior it is between India and Egypt, and only air forces of both the nations will participate. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi will be the first Egyptian president to grace the Republic Day celebrations 2023 as a chief guest. This is one of the facts. So please understand, exercise Cyclone is the first ever joint exercise between the special forces of India and Egypt, and it is happening in Rajasthan. There is also one more exercise we conduct between India and Egypt, that is Desert Warrior. It is happening only between the air forces of the two nations. Next is about PANTRANSCRIPTOME. It was in news because the researchers at the University of California proposed a method called PANTRANSCRIPTOME for analyzing RNA sequencing data. So what is this RNA mapping? The most commonly recognized function of RNA is to synthesize proteins via translation. So scientists discovered that the vast majority of RNA can play roles such as influencing the cell structure or regulating the genes. The entire RNA landscape is known collectively as the transcriptome. Mapping of transcriptome by RNA sequencing allows to understand an individual's gene expression. So mapping can be difficult because RNA sequences can come from non-connected areas of the genome, making it challenging to align. What is this PAN-transcriptome? The PAN-transcriptome is an emerging concept of pangenomics in the genomics field. It combines a transcriptome and pangenome. Typically, individual's genome is compared to that of a reference made up of single linear strand of DNA basis for its evaluation. So transcriptome uses pangenome as a reference to compare an individual's genome. This pangenome contains genetic material from a cohort of diverse individuals which has been sourced from individuals representing a diversity of biogeographic ancestry. So this gives the scientists more points of comparison for which to better understand an individual's genomic variation. The next topic is Doppler radar. So as on January 15, 2023, India has 37 Doppler weather radar, and by 2024-25, it is expected to have 25 more DWRs, taking the total number to 62 radars. So radar is radio detection and ranging, is used for the detection of objects and their distance from them based on the principle of electromagnetic waves. Its basic components are transmitter, receiver, antenna, power supply system, signal processing, and high computing devices. The electromagnetic waves are sent out by the transmitter, which strikes an object or dense medium and is reflected back to the receiver. The distance up to the object is determined based on the speed of the electromagnetic wave and the time to travel to the object and back. So Doppler radar is a specialized radar that uses the Doppler effect to produce velocity data about objects at a distance. The Doppler weather radar is designed to improve precision in a long-range weather forecasting and surveillance using a parabolic dish antenna and a foam sandwich spherical radome. So the Doppler weather radar has the ability to detect air motion, wind speed, rains, temperature, thunderstorms, hail, lightning, cyclones, and cloud movements, among the others. So what is this Doppler effect? So when a source and the signal are in relative motion to each other, there is a change in the frequency observed by the observer. So if they are moving closer, the frequency increases, and if they are moving further, the frequency will decrease. So what is the advantage of this Doppler weather radars? They cover the entire country and they give the most precise detection of weather parameters, including the dynamic weather event turbulences. They help in the quantification of rain forecasts and cyclonic intensity and precipitation. So they are best used in cyclone forecasting, long-time lightning forecast. So phonons add thermal Hall effect. The scientists have observed the thermal Hall effect in insulators, leading to an important open question in the condensed matter physics. So Hall effect: when a current carrying conductor is placed in a transverse magnetic field, a potential difference, that is Hall voltage, arises across the conductor perpendicular to both the magnetic field and the electric current. So what is this thermal Hall effect of conductors? So in the presence of magnetic field, electrons are deflected from their paths in a perpendicular direction. So it is going to be in the perpendicular direction, and when the temperature gradient is applied in the conductor in one direction and another temperature gradient appears in the perpendicular direction in the presence of a magnetic field. So see here, there is a magnetic field. The electrons in the material carry both the electric charges and thermal energy, and the magnetic field deflects them, giving rise to a perpendicular gradient. So what is this thermal Hall effect in the insulators? The scientists have observed that the thermal Hall effect in insulators, as well especially the terbium oxides and strontium titanate. So not the electrons but the phonons in insulators are involved in transferring the heat or electricity. Phonons do not have electric charge, hence they can't be deflected directly by the magnetic field. The phonons are affected by the electrons that are deflected by the magnetic field. They are deflected in perpendicular direction as well. So you should also know about the phonons because they are quasi-particle of vibrational energy, and they are packets of energy, behave like particles in a system. When the grid of atoms that make up the material vibrates, it releases this energy, and physicists encapsulate it in the form of phonons. So it's a quasi-particle of vibrational energy. So ocean heat content. So the oceans are getting warmer. For the fourth year in a row, the world's oceans recorded extreme heating in 2022 on account of anthropological activities. Ocean heat content is the amount of energy absorbed by and stored in the oceans. It is measured in joules, the unit of energy, and when the sunlight reaches the earth, oceans absorb this energy and store it as heat. While the heat is first absorbed at the surface of the water body, some of it eventually dispersed throughout. Water also has higher heat capacity than air, which means that water heats up slower than air and can store much larger amounts of heat. So, more than 90% of the excess heat accumulated in the Earth's climate is deposited in the oceans. So, the climate change and the ocean heat content is an important indicator of climate change. It's an increase in greenhouse gas emission traps more energy from the sun in the atmosphere. The rising ocean temperature strengthens the exchange of energy from oceans to the atmosphere by increasing the evaporation of water and thus the quantity of atmospheric moisture. This leads to the change in the global precipitation patterns as well as temperatures. So, stratification and salinity, contrast index, along with the ocean heat content, are important elements in quantifying the climate change. Stratification. The vertical stratification happens when there is change in density of water due to temperature and salinity changes in oceans. The stratification hinders water mixing and consequently exchange of heat, carbon, oxygen, and so on between the layers. The salinity contrast index. It defines the difference between the salinity averaged over climatological high salinity and low salinity regions. The salinity contrast index is an indicator of the change in the water cycle. It reached its highest level on record in 2022. It determines the water density, which drives the circulation of water in oceans. Next is about Bharos. It is an indigenous mobile operating system. It wants to cater the approximately 100 crore mobile phone users in India. It's an indigenous mobile operating system like Android or iOS. It is developed by J&K Operations Private Limited, a non-profit organization incubated at IIT Madras and funded by the Department of Science and Technology. It is meant to be contributed towards the idea of Atmanirbhar Bharat by creating a secure OS environment for India-based users. Uh, let's see the features of this Bharos. It is developed by the J&K Operations Private Limited and IIT Madras incubated company. It is highly secure with features like NOTA and PASS. It has no default apps. So it appears to be more specialized with greater focus on the app customization and still in limited use at the moment. It is an Android open source project, that is AOSP based operating system with no Google apps or services. It would offer native over the air, that is NOTA updates, and no default app setting. This features a minimalistic home screen with the Indian flag, a list of app categories, selected apps which add past the OS trust and security standards. It will use private app store services, that is PASS system, which will examine and curate the apps that are safe for the user. These systems help smartphones to interact with the device and access its features while ensuring safety. The present state of the current version of Bharos comes with third-party apps like DuckDuckGo and Signal as default browsers and messaging apps. The operating system can be installed on commercial off-the-shelf handset. It will be collaborated with smartphone manufacturers in the future to launch cell phones with Bharos. NOTA updates, security updates, and bug fixes will be automatically installed rather than users having to check for updates and implementing them on their own. NDA setting users do not have to keep or use pre-installed apps in this mobile operating system. So INS Wagir. This was the news because the Indian Navy commissioned the fifth diesel electric Kalvari class submarine Wagir. The latest submarine Wagir gets its name from the erstwhile Wagir submarine, which served the Navy between 1973 and 2001 and undertook numerous operational missions. Wagir is the fifth of the Kalvari class submarine, and in current Kalvari class take their names from erstwhile decommissioned classes of submarines called Kalvari. It launched into water on November 12, 2020 and commenced the sea trials on February 1, 2022. So Wagir is named after Wagir sand shark, which is a predatory marine species. The submarines can launch marine commandos for special operations and has a state-of-the-art torpedo decoy system. So there are 6 Scorpion submarines built under the Project 75. These submarines are built by the Madagaon Dock Shipbuilders Limited in collaboration with French Naval Group. So these submarines are conventional submarines propelled by diesel electric engines. They feature advanced air independent propulsion systems to enable them to stay submerged for longer duration and substantially increase their operational range. The Kalvari class of submarines are capable of launching various types of torpedoes and missiles. They are equipped with a range of surveillance and intelligence gathering mechanisms. The submarine can undertake anti-surface warfare, anti-submarine warfare, intelligence gathering, mine laying, and surveillance missions. The next is about Subhash Chandra Bose Aapda Prabandhan Puraskar, where the center has announced the annual Subhash Chandra Bose Aapda Prabandhan Puraskar for disaster management. So this award is for disaster management. The center has instituted this annual award, that is Subhash Chandra Bose Aapda Prabandhan Puraskar on 125th birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. It recognizes and honors the contribution and services rendered by individuals and organizations in India in the field of disaster management. So the award is announced every year on 23rd January, the birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. It carries a cash prize and also a certificate. So this is related to disaster management. The Subhash Chandra Bose Aapda Prabandhan Puraskar 2023 for their work in disaster management is awarded to Odisha State Disaster Management Authority and Lungle Fire Station of Mizoram. So the Lungle Fire Station responded effectively and efficiently to massive forest fires, which was reported on 24th April 2021 in an uninhabited forest areas. So OSDMA, you should know some details about this Odisha State Disaster Management Authority, established in 1999 in the aftermath of the super cyclone, and the initiatives of this authority is Odisha Disaster Response Action Force, Multi-Hazard Early Warning Service Framework, Sathark Platform System for assessing, tracking and alerting disaster risk information based on dynamic risk knowledge. Next is short selling. The short seller Hindenburg Research disclosed short positions in Adani Group as allegedly stock manipulated and accounting fraud has been done. So buy low, sell high is a traditional investment strategy in which one buys a stock or security at a particular price and then sells it when the price is higher, thereby booking a profit. So this is referred to as long position and is based on the view that the price of the stock or security will appreciate with time. But short selling or shorting is a trading strategy based on the expectation that the price of the security will fall, while fundamentally it is based on the buy low, sell high approach. The sequence of transactions is reversed in short selling. So to tell high first and buy low. So also in short selling, the trader usually does not own the securities he sells, but he merely borrows them. In the short stock market, traders usually short stocks by selling shares they have borrowed from others through brokerages. When the price of the shares fall to the expected levels, the trader would purchase the shares at the lower price and return them to the owner, booking a profit in the process. So if however the price of the share appreciates instead of falling, the trader would be forced to buy shares at a higher price to return to the owner, thereby booking a loss. What are these ATI bonds? The Bombay High Court quashed the write-off of additional Tier 1 bonds issued by the S Bank Limited. So these AT1 bonds are called additional tier bonds, are a class of bonds issued by the banks. They are typically used by the banks to bolster their core or Tier 1 capital to meet the Basel III norms. AT1 bonds are subordinate to all other debt and accept common equity. They offer higher returns but also carry a higher risk. So these bonds are unsecured bonds that have perpetual tenor and they have no maturity date but have a call option by which the banks buy these bonds back from the investors. So the risk involved are AT1 bonds like other bonds pay regular interest. If the bank issuing is making losses or at risk of falling short of capital need, it has the discretion to either reduce or completely skip their interest payout. So when a bank becomes non-viable, AT1 bonds are either converted into equity or written off based on the direction of the RBI. The next topic is kelp forests. They are declining because of the climate change is showed by a new study. These kelp forests are underwater ecosystems formed in the shallow water by the dense growth of several kinds of species known as kelps. They are actually extremely large brown algae. Although they look like plants, the kelp attaches to the sea floor and eventually grows to the water surface, relies on sunlight to generate food and energy. They thrive in cold, nutrient rich water. So, if you can see the kelp forest in the cold, nutrient rich waters of different parts of the globe, right? So the kelp can sometimes persist at lower altitudes aided by cool water upwelling or in deep water refugia where they are protected by the thermocline. So they have great ecological and economic value. They provide underwater habitats to hundreds of species of invertebrates, fishes and other algae. So the loss of kelp forests will also lead to a decline of the unique biodiversity that they support. The rare edge populations in warm low latitudes of kelp may contain unique adaptive or evolutionary genetic diversity. So kelp populations at equator world range edges are particularly vulnerable to climate change and their unique trait is under threat. So Eclonia radiate is the dominant and most widely distributed laminarian kelp in the southern hemisphere which rapidly succumb to the warmer temperatures more than 27 degrees centigrade. So India is lagging behind the targets to increase the number and quality of tree and forest covers plantations, which is set up in the National Green India Mission. So the National Mission for a Green India is one of the 8 missions under the National Action Plan on the Climate Change. So it aims at protecting, restoring, enhancing India's forest car and responding to the climate change. Improving the tree car is critical to sequester carbon and bolster India's carbon stocks as part of the international commitments to mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions. The target under the mission is 10 million acres on forest and non-forest lands for increasing the forest or tree cover and to improve the quality of the existing forest. So from 2015 to 16 to 2021-22, the center had approved a target of increasing tree or forest cover by 53,377 acres and improving the quality of degraded forest in 17 districts. So the achievement from RTI, we got to know that 17 states had increased the tree or forest cover by 26,287 acres and forest quality improved in only 1,02,096 acres as of December 31, 2022. So the Punjab committed to 629 acres but having delivered 1082 acre. As per the India State of Forest report, the forest and tree cover in the country increased by 2261 square kilometers since the last assessment in 2019. So our critics have pointed out that the increase in green cover was almost entirely via commercial plantations. The next is about the nitrate radicals. A new study found that parts of China and India are nighttime hotspots for the production of nitrate radicals, which makes air pollution worse. The nitrate radical is an oxide of nitrogen that consists of three oxygen atoms bound to a nitrogen atom. So nitrate radicals could increase the amount of unhealthy ozone and PM25 fine particulate matter in the atmosphere. So nitrate radicals will oxidize gas pollutants such as volatile organic compounds, and they will be then generate ozone and secondary organic aerosol. Both deteriorates the air quality. Ozone is an air pollutant that affects the human health crop crop yield. The secondary organic aerosol is an important component of PM 2.5, reduces the emissions of VOCs, could reduce this nighttime oxidation in India and China. The sovereign green bonds. So the Reserve Bank of India will auction the maiden tranche of sovereign green bonds worth rupees 8,000 crore. So in the Union Budget of 2022-23, the government had announced the sale of green bonds as part of its market borrowing for the first time. The proceeds could be deposited by the Consolidated Fund of India in line with the regular treasury policy, then deployed in the public sector projects that help to reduce the carbon footprint of the economy. It will use the proceeds raised from SGRBs to finance or refinance expenditure in parts or whole for the various green projects. The framework for the sovereign green bond was issued by the government in November 2022. The RBI is auctioning two green bonds worth rupees 4,000 crore each. The Government of India SGRB 2028 with tenure of 5, and the 2023 is for the tenure of 10 years. So the green bonds are the bonds issued by any sovereign entity, intergovernmental groups or alliances and corporates with the aim that the proceeds of the bonds are utilized for projects classified as environmentally sustainable. So an important financial instrument to deal with the threats of climate change and related challenges is this green bonds, and it makes environmental projects connect with the capital markets and investors and channel capital towards a sustainable development. So the foreign investor can invest in green bonds as security under the fully accessible route. Greenium. The main difference between regular sovereign bond auctions and green bond auctions is the premium. So globally, the green bonds are issued at a premium as the instrument and referred to as greenium. This is meant to facilitate access to the cheaper capital for environmental friendly projects, and a premium refers to a lower yield or lower return and in turn higher price on a debt instrument. The yield is inversely proportional to the bond prices. Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. The centre has approved rupees 15,225 crore credit for over 20,000 projects so far under the Agriculture Infra Fund. It is a pan-India central sector scheme launched in July 2020. This fund provides a medium long-term debt financing for creation of post-harvest management infrastructure and community farm assets. It is also known as National Agriculture Infra Financing Facility. The leading institutes are multiple, including commercial banks, cooperative banks, RRBs, small finance banks, NCDC, NBFCs, etc. And the duration is 10 years, that is 2020, 21, 2032 to 33. So the beneficiaries of this agriculture infrastructure funds provides all-round financial support to create post-harvest management infrastructure and build community farming assets throughout the country to farmers and agri-entrepreneurs, farmer-producer organizations, self-help groups, joint liability groups and many others. The target, rupees 1 lakh crore credit dispersal in 6 years from 2020-21, interest subvention and credit guarantee assistance until 2032 to 33. The benefits are credit guarantee for loans up to rupees 2 crore, interest subvention of 3% limited to rupees 2 crore per project. The T1 settlement. The Indian equity market is moving to T1 trade settlement cycle from January 27, 2023. Now, what is this T plus 1? That is trade plus 1 settlement means that a transaction on the back of any purchase or sale of securities will reflect the next day. That is after a period of 1 day in the demat account of the investor. So, T refers to the trading day. T plus 1 is trading day plus 1 day. The Securities Exchange Board of India is the apex capital market regulator in India. And in a Earlier in India, trade settlement used to take place on T+2 basis. SEBI had cut the number of days in the settlement cycle before as well. And in September 2021, SEBI provided flexibility to exchanges to offer either T+1 or T+2 settlement. So the implementation, the stock exchanges NSE BSE decided to change to 3+1 a phased manner. In the first phase of implementation, the bottom 100 stocks in the terms of market value moved to T+1 state settlement, and thereafter gradually stocks were added month after month. So global practices. India will be the second largest global market after China to implement this T+1 settlement cycle of stocks, and most international markets such as US, Europe and Japan are still under T+2 settlement cycle. So the green comet named Comet C2022 E3ZTF is appearing close to Earth after 50,000 years. It was first discovered in March 22 by Wide Field Survey camera at the Swishi Transient facility in the US. It was named as C bar 2022 E3ZTF after the Zwicky Transient facility which first discovered it. So after approaching the sun in the middle of January, it is now moving away from it along its own orbit. The comet is appearing close to the Earth and now visible in several parts of the world. The comet was calculated to orbit the sun every 50,000 years and comes from the Oort cloud. The Oort cloud in the edge of our solar system is called the home of comets. The Oort cloud is a big spherical region of outer space enveloping our sun, consisting of innumerable small objects such as comets and asteroids. So the comets are frozen rocky or gas-filled objects that are remnants of the formation of the solar system. Due to their composition, characteristics and path they move in, they tend to leave a light behind them. The green color of the comet. In the green comet, the head of the comet itself is green and emits a whitish light behind, often called as the tail of the comet. It gets its beautiful green glow from diatomic carbons that is present in the comet's head. When the ultraviolet rays, solar radiation fall on the comet, these molecules emit green light. The last time the green comet tore past Earth was in the time of Neanderthals. So Tropics 23 is a sea vigil for coastal security, and it is being undertaken along the entire 7,516.6 kilometer coastline and exclusive economic zone of India. So it aims to comprehensively and holistically validate the efficacy of the measures taken for coastal defense since 2611. It will provide a realistic assessment of our strength and weakness. Mock drills and simulation of terror attacks will be conducted. So this is Indian Navy is carrying out the 2023 edition of Theatre Level Operational Readiness Exercise Tropics. The Tropics is biennial inter-service military exercise in the Indian Ocean region. And this Tropics 23rd is being conducted over a duration of 3 months with the participation of Indian Navy, Indian Army, Indian Air Force and Coastal Guard assets. It is aimed at validating and refining the Navy's concepts of operation as well as to test overall combat capabilities. It involves almost all of the operational assets such as warships, submarines and aircraft to check the force's combat readiness in the region. So the inter-service military exercise will further strengthen the interoperability and joint operations in a complex environment. So the exercise provides an opportunity to test the combat readiness of the combined fleets of the Indian Navy. It is also conducted by the biennial tri-services, that is AMPEX 2023 at Kakinada in Andhra Pradesh, which focused on joint training of elements of all the three services in various facets of amphibious operations to enhance the interoperability and synergy. So thank you, and we'll see in the part 3 of GS3 syllabus.